Hello, everyone. My name is Brendan Woodruff. I want to welcome you to the second edition of our Green New York Sustainability series of webinars. Our first one last month was a great success. It featured DEC's Gary Fineland talking about composting. We had a lot of engagement. And if you're interested in viewing that, you can see a recording of that on the Green New York website. A couple of housekeeping items here before we get started today. This webinar, as you heard, is being recorded, and it will be available on the Green New York website afterwards. So if there's somebody who missed it or you'd like to go back and view any of the content again, you can find it on the website right where you found the registration page. If you have any questions as we go along, please type them into the chat box, and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation. There's also a Q&A box. Either one of those will work, and we'll address those at the end. And we're excited to have recently announced 2 new webinar topics for the spring. In May, we're going to be doing reducing lawn and garden pesticide use, just in time for gardening season. And in June, we're going to have a webinar on how you can protect pollinators to line up with Pollinator Protection Week. If you do have any topics for webinars going forward, if there's anything you'd like to see, please let us know. We're always taking suggestions, and we want to be able to provide content that's useful. So without further ado, we'll get to today's presentation. It is on greener gifting. So for everybody like myself that has been a little late in starting their shopping, we should get some good tips today. It is being presented by Jody Smits-Anderson of DASNY. She has a wealth of knowledge on sustainability issues, and she's a great presenter, so we should have a really good webinar in store for us today. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Jody.
Hey, great. Thank you, Brandon. Can everyone hear me okay? Just, you probably can't answer, so that's a dumb question. That's how I start off my great presenting skills, by asking a question no one can answer. So I'm going to dive in. When I was talking about, when we were talking about doing these lunch and learn sessions, we thought it was really important to focus on ways that we can personally update our ability to be sustainable, or our thought process to help our ability to be sustainable. And one of the things, of course, this time of year is gifting and greener gifting. And I went back and forth. There's all this stuff that we buy. Unfortunately, Hanukkah and Christmas are quite often gimme sessions, or let me write down everything I've ever wanted and see, what I end up with. And over the last couple of years, my husband and son and I have done a few things to try and change that. It's an ongoing process, but some of the ideas have turned out to be really, really fun. So we're going to talk about several approaches, and then at the end, I'd love to hear some stories from you as to how to green, because these are just ideas from me and my family, or questions that you have about the success of some of the things we've done. All right, we'll head into the presentation. I think that there are 3 ways to approach this. We can green the gift. We can avoid buying plastic things. We can, and we'll get into some other ideas there. We can green the packaging when we give the gift. And that's really where this all started, was how do we give gifts in a slightly greener way. And then you can green the process of giving. And that's probably where I've found the most fun, and my family's found the most fun. Starting with greening the gifts themselves, there are a lot of ideas that are just enough off the beaten path and can be really designed for the person you're giving things to. That can be a lot of fun. When I was chair of a not-for-profit board for a couple of years, when I left, I decided that I wanted to give a gift to all my board members, but I wanted to do it in a slightly different way. So I went to a local thrift store, and I found a dozen different plates and a dozen different bowls that kind of matched the plates but not really. And I bought cloth napkins, and then I found sets of silverware that were incomplete, and I made a dozen sets of silverware, and I wrapped up the plates and the silverware with the napkins, and each board member got a little set of tableware and silverware to use at work, with a little note from me about, I hope they could take time every day to be in their own heads. So it just was retasked stuff, which I think is a really positive thing, and it was targeted more to the people that were receiving the gift. If you take old photos that really have no value when they're sitting in a box, you can turn them into something that is usable or brings nostalgia back to the table. And I think the key point is to think of the person. My son is doing spray paint art, and he uses a lot of things stolen from my kitchen, quite frankly, to mask the spray paint and to make different shapes as he's creating his spray paint art. So I'm going to drive around to a couple of different places and pick up small glasses and lids and different sized plates and cups and put them all in a big box and give them to him. So it's not something that's bought. It's not something that takes a lot of effort, but he'll open that box and be like, oh my God, I never realized I could use all these things. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in the Q&A and the people in your life that are special and how you can make them feel special. You can certainly make something. This is where I live. I'm very hands-on with things, but I think it's more than just making something. It's making something and engaging the person you're giving the gift to in a way. So you can make a necklace, that's fine, with beads, or you can give a book about making necklaces, and then you can go and find old jewelry in a thrift shop for a couple of bucks and have that as a starting point for people to take apart and make their own things. It's an investment in them and their time. You can do something very simple and make that cheesecake that everyone denies themselves quite often, but at Christmas you can get away with it. You can make a snowflake with a message, or do something that engages the family, like making a game with photos of the family as part of the memory game, or a storytelling game. One year we get for gifts for people, we try and make gifts for people, and one year we made a little game called Think-Ets, and we found between 10 and 15 little items, like little tiny wooden snowmen, little tiny dice, little flowers, and we put a bunch of random things in a bag with instructions on how to play several memory games with those little items or how to tell stories with those little items. And that was kind of fun. You can also give gifts. You can give greener gifts, and you can do it in a way that affects, that informs people about how they can do things differently than they might be used to. And the cautionary tale is to try and do this not in a preachy way. So one year I bought durable straws, glass straws, and metal straws, and put them in stockings for Christmas. And I made sure that my son had the straws with a little bit of a wider mouth because he likes to make milkshakes and smoothies. And I gave my husband bent metal straws because he always likes the bent straws better. So try and cater it. And what I really like is I switched over to shampoo and conditioner bars instead of plastic bottles of shampoo and conditioner. And you can buy so many different locally made options of this. So you're supporting local markets, and you're also finding very personalized scents. The one that's there on the little cloth is a cedar-smelling soap, cedar and sand. So you can pick what might appeal to the individual. You know, I have kind of a hatred of Keurig. No offense to anyone who does like the Keurig system, but there's a lot of waste involved with that. So I've changed over to a French press and loose coffee. Maybe there's a way to give a little individual French press for people at work with coffee. So different ideas, and these are just some of mine, again. I think the key is really to give an experience. So the picture is of my son playing Empire Builder with my husband and I. This was a couple years ago when he was still a cute little kid with long blonde hair. He's not anymore. He's cute, but he's not a little kid with long blonde hair. So to give an experience, like, it's great to give wool mittens and wool socks. I have smart wool socks that I love. But how about a darning kit with matching yarn and a coupon for time to learn how to darn together? You've created a situation where you're learning a skill, spending time with somebody, and giving something durable and teaching them how to maintain that durable thing. Theater tickets, and then the thing that you could wrap up is the opera glasses, with a little coupon for a ride to the show. My husband often gives me a chore that he's been promising, and then he follows through on it, like building shelves in the cupboard or something like that. And then, like the picture, a game night and a game. And I think I can't tout game nights enough. I think that our family has gotten through some difficult teenage years based on the fact that we play games once a week all together. So that was really greening the gift, and a simple thing to do is also to green the packaging. And truly, I'm just talking about the packaging. You can wrap it with repurposed materials, like brown paper is a very recyclable and recycled item. You can wrap with white paper, and you can have your kids draw on it or you draw on it. You can find blueprints. I worked for a guy who said that his son thought that Santa was an architect. And then the classic comics. My grandmother used to wrap all of our Christmas presents in the Sunday comics. Then you can get more involved in, one year we decided to use all brown paper but paint the paper with hand and footprints. So our family was in the kitchen one year with our hands and feet covered in paint and marking up all the brown paper wrapping for that Christmas. We also used potato prints. And that's fun. It becomes, the paper itself becomes part of the story. There are some beautiful things online about how to wrap, especially with brown paper. I think the pictures are gorgeous of how to detail the wrapping so that the gift under the tree becomes part of the adventure. It's so beautiful. There's also making the wrapping itself part of the gift. And one year I did this. There's a picture here of the red pashmina that's been positioned to cover up a book, it looks like. So there's a book and a pashmina, and you can sit in the corner and read and be cozy. And I bought several pashminas and used those to wrap gifts one year for all of my friends. And it's very fun. And then there's no wrapping paper at all. Or, you know, giving bath salts in a painted bottle, or anything else in a container that is in and of itself reusable. A cousin of mine cross-stitched a lid for a mason jar with this beautiful little Christmas kitten, and it has been holding sugar in my pantry since she gave it to me, and I think I was 16 or so when she gave it to me. So that's an excellent old jar that has served me well, and I think of her every single time I use sugar. Durable for the win. I spent, a couple weekends ago, I went to like Joann's or Michael's or something, and I found all kinds of material, bought a yard here and a yard there and 2 yards of the other, and I came home and I just started cutting big squares out of it and sewing it into bags. And I stitch a little piece of ribbon on the bag about 3 inches below the top of the bag so that when the bag is full, you can tie the ribbon and close the bag. So that I have about 50 reusable cotton cloth bags in a variety of sizes. We'll use these at home for us, for gifts I give to my husband or son, and we'll try and keep them pretty much in-house. And the point is to eliminate purchasing all that wrapping paper and tape. And I think that it'll keep all that color and vibrancy under our tree and still make it exciting. There's a bag that we bought a couple years ago, not the one that's shown. The black and white one that's shown does the same thing. It has a little tag on it that you can write with Sharpies the name of the next person to receive the bag with hopefully wine in the bag. And we bought one in Mystic, Connecticut that was made out of an old sail, and it had the same lines so that it could be regifted. What a great idea to make something that's regiftable. There are also, I've seen, like at the Pottery Place in Stuyvesant Plaza, you could go and make a plate for cookies and make it a regifting plate. And so everyone who receives it is, I wouldn't say obligated, but encouraged to regift that plate with more cookies on it. I think that's kind of fun. It carries the spirit of Christmas forward in a different way. There are other ways to green the packaging, but I think the key for me, our recent shift to the cloth bags makes me think I'll learn from that and maybe have more ideas next year, but for now, that's where I'm heading. And I'd love to hear your ideas at the end of the presentation. So now we get into the part that I like most, and it's greening the gifting, the giving part, the actual process of Christmas. And I think one of the things that happens, and I'm not saying it happens to everyone, but I think it happens often, that it becomes just a very fast, busy, frustrating, overwhelming experience. So how do we slow it down? There's a slow foods movement. I think there should be a slow holiday movement, a slow Christmas movement. One of the things that we have as a tradition, and I'm sure there are plenty of wonderful traditions, we read the night before Christmas on Christmas Eve out loud. And our son is 16 and he still thinks this is cool, mostly because my husband does the most ridiculous voices every year. So Scooby-Doo is a big favorite. and it's that. One year he read it as Darth Vader. Another year he tried to read it as Mickey Mouse, but his throat gave out about halfway through. It just makes it fun, and it makes us all pause for a minute on Christmas Eve and look at the tree and sit in a room together. We, on Christmas morning, we open our Christmas stockings first, one at a time. Then we make a light finger breakfast. In our house, it's clementines and Swedish coffee bread and coffee and mimosas. And we're still able to eat in between while we spend the rest of the morning opening one present at a time. One present, slow, we visit, we thank each other. We started really trying to slow down Christmas morning because when my husband and I were first married, it was just the two of us, and getting up in the morning and exchanging our 2 or 3 gifts just seemed so over. So we try to stretch it out, and I've got more stories of stretching it out. One of my stories about stockings, which I think is really funny, it depends on how in tune your family is or how many visitors you have over Christmas. I distinctly remember one year when I came home from college for Christmas, and it was the one year that my brothers and my sister and their families were all with us, and we had 13 stockings hanging over the fireplace, which was absolutely ridiculous for us because we didn't do that very often. And I went out and bought silly string, and in the middle of the night decided to play Santa, and I put silly string in every single stocking except for my mother's. And it didn't take long for the Anderson family to catch on to the fact that since Mom didn't have silly string, we all had to attack her. And it was probably the most fun Christmas morning that I can remember. Another thing is that everyone has to get a toy on Christmas. That's another family rule. So one year my mom gave all of us wrist racers. You probably don't remember these things, but they were tiny little watches with a pop-up plastic dome and a little ramp with a car inside that you wound up. So you'd put your wrist on the floor and pop open the top and put down the ramp, and then the wrist racer would take off. And she gave my dad a cap gun. And we had wrist racer races in the kitchen for most of Christmas Day. And the reason this is funny is because I think I was 30 at the time, and my brothers and sisters were in their late 40s, and we were all in the kitchen, you know, with wrist racers all day, which was cool. Another way to slow Christmas morning is to make a theme. And this can be really funny. One year we did the rule that every single present had to have something to do with earth, air, fire, water, or duct tape. And the duct tape was, you know, it's really, in my mind, one of the necessary elements of life, but it was also kind of the safety, so that if the present had nothing to do with earth, air, fire, or water, you could wrap it in duct tape and it would still qualify. So every single present we opened had a description on the gift tag about how it related to earth, air, fire, water, or duct tape. Or when you opened it, you had to kind of justify its existence within the theme of the day. And it really changes how you decide what presents to buy and what's appropriate and fun. Another year, elements were the theme, so I made a periodic table of Christmas elements and colored it all in. It didn't take me very long. It was funny. But the elements were things like furry and glittery and cold, and cozy, chocolate, every kind of thing that you can think of that has anything to do with the holiday season. And I put them all in the chart and gave them all one or two letter designations, and then wrote chemical descriptions for each of the presents I gave to people. It was kind of fun, and it certainly did slow down Christmas morning. You can also do a theme that just ties into whatever's happening in the marketing world out there. We did a Star Wars theme one year, which was very easy to achieve because the Star Wars film had just come out, 7, and everything was Star Wars, and everything in our house that year was Star Wars as well. I think the most fun thing is to give them a clue, and Google is our friend in this endeavor. One year, every single present I gave to either my husband or son had 2 photos attached to the gift tag, and they had to guess from the photos what was in the package. So a foot and a sheep, of course, meant it was a pair of socks. And there were all kinds of clues like that. Some of them were absolutely impossible to get. They still got their gifts, but it was funny to see them try and figure it out. So a word search, and you can create them for free online. Just Google free word search, and you can make them. A scavenger hunt, a riddle. I think those are all fun things. A crossword puzzle. I did one year crossword puzzles. This year, I think I'm going to do a song for each of the big presents anyway. So I'll have to be creative and see if Pandora can help me out with songs about some of the things I've bought for my husband and son. Like a camera. My son's getting a camera, so what song? Maybe Kodachrome from Simon & Garfunkel. Those kind of things can really make the morning fun. And again, Google is your friend. It's amazing what you can find if you just spend a minute or two looking for it. So back to the idea of making things, and it's kind of a very short presentation, but I want to really make this point. Making things for Christmas kind of changes things. And I did list a couple things here. It's not easy. It's not easy to make things. Well, I'll tell you a story in a minute. It's not necessarily less expensive, although you can certainly achieve things that are less expensive. It's certainly not impossible. It's fun, and I get excited about Christmas when I make things. So the past, I would say it's past dozen years or more, we have, actually it's even more, my husband and I make 20 or so presents for 20 of our friends, and I make about 100 ornaments, and we make our own Christmas cards. And that sounds like really crazy, and some years it is. Some years we're absolutely freaking out the week before Christmas because we bit off more than we could chew. We've had 1 or 2 absolute failures. One of the first years I made these really cool bird feeders that all just folded up flat. And unfortunately, when you made them into bird feeders and hung them, they like to fold up flat anyway. So we've had some failures, but we've had some really good successes. And I find myself, like this past weekend, I sat down to make ornaments, and I finished about half of them, and I had Christmas music playing, and I was visiting with Martin and Eric, my husband and son, while I was working on these ornaments. And then last night, Martin was in the basement cutting out some of the wood that's needed for the presents we're making for people. And then once he's done with that, I'm going to take it for the next phase and finish the present for everybody. And so long as you do them early enough and you don't stress yourself out about it, it is so much fun to envision what would be nice for people to have. In addition, we've made a kind of a rule in our family that each of us has to make one present for the other people. So I make a present for my husband and I make a present for my son, and my son will make a present for my husband and I. Each of us are together. And what shocks me every year, and you know what, in the back of my mind I know this, but it's really evident, is the presents that we have made for each other are the things that we really remember and cherish. And they don't have to be difficult. They don't have to be a project that takes months. They can be. But one year, my son has always taken photographs, and one year he, unbeknownst to me, followed Martin and I around when we walked to the grocery store and took some pictures of us walking down the street hand in hand. And the present that year he gave me was 3 photographs of me, but I was almost not visible in any of the photographs. One is a picture of my foot with my cat laying over my leg. One picture was the back of my husband and I as we walked down the street hand in hand. And the other picture was from when we went kayaking and I was silhouetted in the sun, and you could see my kayak in the water and the paddle in the air. And those are in my office, and I see them every day, and they're amazing. So presents that when you get yourself to think about the person who's getting the gift and what you can make for them, it also changes the process and slows Christmas. So it's not just let's go out and buy things for people, and makes you be a little creative, which is a challenge. And then you can also slow Christmas morning with different ideas. So I guess that's probably a little too much about my family, but I wanted to share with you that it's kind of fun to green the gift, green the packaging, green the giving. And I think the key is to put a little more thought process into it and buffer yourself with a little time, which is hard to come by. And then when Christmas happens, it's a real experience, not just the frenetic result of a buying spree. And that's it from me. And I'd love to hear your stories and your questions. I do know a lot of resources, but I didn't pack them into the presentation. I'd be glad to help out with some resources as well as pertinent.
That was fantastic, Jody. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Your son doesn't know about the webinar series, does he?
He kind of does.
Oh.
Why? Because I didn't give away any presents, did I?
Yeah.
Oh, I did.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah, I don't think he's going into the annals of state government websites to find webinars between now and Christmas. So.
Well, I have to tell you that the camera present is one that we had to make a family deal in order to get for him, because he's actually going to college for photography, or that's his intent. Mm-hmm. And so this is not a simple camera. This is a big deal. So he's actually selling some of his artwork to earn some of the money for the camera. So he's aware of it.
Okay, good. All right, so we can go through some of the questions and comments we got here. And if you do have more, please type them in, especially if you have any stories or ideas that you have done that we can share with the group here. The first comment that we got is Jody rocks. Is there a response to that?
I think I need to invite everyone over to my house for Christmas at some point.
Yeah. The next one here is, where can you get brown paper? Do you just reuse paper bags from the grocery store?
I've done both. I actually have a huge roll of brown paper in my office that I used for some stuff at DASNY a few years ago. What we do you can still buy it at post offices, and you can buy it at craft stores. Usually it comes in kind of small rolls, but you can order big rolls online as well. I would say Arlene's would definitely have it, and most places that have any kind of packing supplies would have brown paper.
Awesome. We have another comment here. I really like the idea of using cloth bags instead of wrapping paper. That's the same here. I think I'm going to be picking up that trick this year. That's a really good one.
Cool.
We got a few questions here. Let me bring them up. All right, so what do you do? There's some folks that have expectations for the holidays in terms of the amount of gifts, the types of gifts. Is there anything that you do in terms of expectation setting or not disappointing people if they have this idea of kind of a very commercialized holiday season?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we kind of grew into it, and for us, the key has been it's not a fully homemade Christmas, but each of us expects, you know, one homemade gift from the others. And so, you know, we still get all the stuff. And I actually am still rebelling against the stuff. I think my husband has more of the thought that everyone needs a certain number of presents under the tree, and I'm not as much that kind of person. But you're right, expectations are a big deal, especially with younger kids, and I think that can be addressed by making the things that can engage them. Like if you make a wooden tic-tac-toe game for a little kid, and then you're taking the time to sit and play with them. Or, I mean, there are tons of things you can make for kids to play with, or to give them that you can engage in the play with them after. I think that's what kids usually want. My son was overwhelmed a couple of Christmases because, you know, we try to make up for the fact that we really don't have any family in the area. And all of a sudden he, you know, later in the morning, he's like, okay, I need a break. There's too much.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think quite often we think people want more, but what they really want is special.
Yeah. The next one we have on here is, I had a recycled birthday party a few years ago, asked friends to pick out something in their home that they didn't want anymore and thought I would like. It was a huge success, and we all had a lot of fun, and nobody had to buy anything.
Oh, my God, that is an awesome idea. What a great, I'm taking that. That's mine.
Yeah, I love that. The next one here, friends have a monthly crafternoon throughout the year to make Christmas gifts and crafts, so it's not a mad rush at the end of the year. I hope to do that someday. That's a really
also a great idea. We had the challenge, we used to live in Petersburg, and the only place we had to do any kind of woodworking or bigger craft stuff was in a shed outside, an unheated shed. So I always thought that would help me and my husband start doing this stuff in like August, you know, just the prep work. It never worked. We were always out in that shed after Thanksgiving, shivering, cursing. So I like the idea. I'm the kind of person who doesn't like to talk about Christmas until Thanksgiving. That's the only thing that holds me back from starting earlier. But I love the idea of a crafternoon. I like what I'm seeing in the market of what do they call them, craft cafes? Repair cafes, where you can learn about repairing things or making things, knitting, darning, woodworking, small machinery, all that stuff happens in repair cafes. I'd love to see a couple of those in the area.
That's a really good idea.
So I think, Mandy, you should found that with your friends who have a monthly crafternoon and get it started.
Yeah. The next one we have, do you know of a resource for containers that could be gifted to use as zero-waste containers for use with cosmetics or condiments?
Let's see. I do know they sell really good containers at places like Honest Weight Food Co-op. Another, you know, I have found a ton of great containers at IKEA. There's a little bit of I mean, you either love IKEA or you hate them, right? So I happen to love them. It's very easy to actually have container fatigue when you go to IKEA, but they're jars and they're small. They're like tall water bottles and things like that that are great for regifting, painting and gifting. Those are great. And the other thing is just, you know, go simple and go to the canned food aisle and grab the cases of ball jars in different sizes, and to make apple butter or to make a simple salt scrub for the shower and give it in one of those containers, it's really classy.
That's a really good idea. The next one on here is maps or brochures from tourist sites. I use them as gift wraps, especially if they're glossy and oversized.
That's another great idea.
It is, especially if you've traveled with the person to that place.
Yeah, and I've seen other really good uses of maps, too, to create, in combination with my favorite material, which is duct tape, to create folios for storage of other papers or photographs, and then the maps become part of the story of that container. So you can take a map from a trip and turn it into a folio or an accordion kind of folder by taping the edges, and then the photos from that trip and the mementos from that trip can go in that folio with the map of that trip.
Mm-hmm.
That's I like that. The wrapping paper, that's a great idea.
Yeah. We used reusable bags for gift wrap last year. Cleanup was a breeze. I'll look into doing the homemade ornament idea. So you're already spurring action.
That's cool. So the ornaments that I make every year are from corks, and I never know what I'm going to make. And you know, I thought I would run out of ideas like 5 years ago, but so far I've made, I think now, 13 different cork ornaments, and every year it's just fun. And friends now give me corks, which is kind of cool. And a friend of mine last year gave me hundreds. I don't know. She drinks a lot, I guess, hundreds of champagne corks. So I revamped my idea this year to use champagne corks, and it's kind of been fun.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of go with the flow.
Go ahead.
I said kind of go with the flow. You know, you don't know exactly. That's the other thing with making things or with greening gifting. You don't really always know exactly what's going to happen, but I think that's part of the joy. I mean, when I order something from Amazon and I get it from Amazon, I'm pretty sure I know what I'm getting.
Yeah, that's true.
And there's not as much joy in that for me somehow.
Mm-hmm. My office wants to do a grab bag for $10. Any ideas what I can do that will be meaningful, since I don't know who's getting my gift, and also eco-friendly?
I would suggest that if you can create something that they can then build on, that's probably the most successful. And the idea of, you know, the plates that they can use at work, or some kind of kit that allows them to learn a skill, a small skill. I mean, give them, like, man, a soldering tool for like $6 and a little tool on soldering and 2 spools of metal. That's like a gift that somebody would look at and say, why the hell did I get this? And then a week later they'd say, you know what? I could learn how to do that.
Yeah. So the next one here, we also slow down Christmas. It's always been stockings, 1 or 2 gifts, then breakfast, and then presents at a time. I remember when my son was very young, and instead of rushing to the tree to open gifts, he waited patiently, and when my parents arrived, he helped them get their gifts into the house, put them under the tree, and was sure everyone got to the table for food first. It was beautiful.
That's awesome. I never understood, and granted, you know what, I've never had a big family, so I've never understood the whole kids getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and running down and opening all their presents, like, right out of the gate. I'm all about the anticipation and the stretching it out and the, you know, reminiscing when somebody gets a gift and their reaction is like, you know, when they got a gift 3 years ago, somebody brings up that story.
Mm-hmm.
Those kind of things are fun. So kudos for slowing it down.
Yeah. My sister and her husband just bought their first house, and they both love wine. This year, I'm making them a homemade bird feeder for their yard that utilizes a wine bottle, trying to tie in something personal for everyone's gift.
That's awesome. There are great things to be done with wine bottles. One year, a friend of mine gave me a wine bottle that she had this was before LED lights with little battery packs were available. So she gave me a wine bottle. She had cut a hole in the back of the wine bottle and put in a string of lights with the plug out the back of the wine bottle. And it's been sitting on our counter ever since, and around the holidays we start to plug it in, and we have this nice little glow in the corner of our kitchen from that wine.
It's amazing how many uses there are for wine bottles.
Yeah, I want to get a glass cutter. I asked for Santa for a glass cutter this year so that I could do funky vases and glasses and explore that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Never done that before.
The next one here, do you ever give donations to organizations as a gift? And I can take this from the beginning. So one thing my family has always kind of thought about is that, when we're celebrating kind of the abundance that we've been kind of blessed with, is that you should try and give back as well, which I think is part of the, the holiday season. There's an organization called Global Giving, where you can give people gift cards that they can then go on the site and donate that money to the charity of their choice. And they've got, I think, a couple thousand different charities on there, and they go through and they do the rankings of, making sure they're legitimate and things like that. And that's worked out really well. So I usually give that to people that I end up giving gifts to, since that also allows them to have that interactiveness of saying, oh, what can I do with this, $10? What do I care about, whether it's Heifer International, Doctors Without Borders, an environmental cause, or anything like that. So, instead of giving somebody like, here's a donation in your name, this allows them to get the donation, but then also have some interactivity with it. And
well, that's really cool. We also, well, my husband, since we got our most recent dog, we've been, in his name, I've been donating to the Menands shelter. And he requested that one year, and it's just become a yearly thing. Another thing that we do, I do have some nieces and nephews, and now, I guess, great nieces and nephews. And I don't know them. I mean, this is really, I just don't know them. They live far away. We don't connect very often. But what we tend to do is do, like, World Wildlife Fund. We do a donation and buy a little stuffed whale or whatever to go with that, or a certificate. One year we, for all the little kids, because, they have so much stuff, really, we bought, we donated to buy solar lights for communities, and in all honesty, I forget which country. And then we sent the family a little camping solar light so that they kind of knew, it wasn't exactly the same thing, but they kind of knew what we had purchased in their name, kind of thing. But I love the donation. I feel like I'm a little ashamed I didn't have it included in my ideas, because that's a fantastic idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The next one here, I've received Christmas presents, nice gold jewelry that were wrapped in Christmassy hand towels. That's
kind of cool.
Yeah, that's almost like a twofer.
Like the pashmina, it's the gift in a gift.
Mm-hmm. So are there any other questions? If you have them, please get them into the chat box of the Q&A function now. Jody, do you have any last thoughts on what we've been discussing here in the discussion?
No, I love these ideas, and I thank you for them. You've inspired me to look at more opportunities. I think that from me, and I'm not successful at this yet, but I do think that we make a big deal about the presence, and I think we should make a bigger deal about the time spent with people and the understanding of each other, and you can't do that all the time, but when you can, I think it takes, like I said, a little bit of thought and a little bit of investment in doing things in a way that is a little slower and might be a little harder sometimes, but is so much better.
Yeah. So I'm not seeing any more questions or comments here. So with that, we'll wrap up for today. Thank you very much, Jody, for the presentation today. This was fantastic. And thank you to everybody who was on the line. Just as a reminder, this is recorded. It will be on the Green New York website. And we have next month's presentation is going to be on home energy efficiency and weatherization. And that's taking place at noon on Tuesday, January 8th. So thank you very much, everybody. Oh, go ahead.
And spread the word. Tell your colleagues. I think that this can be really fun if you have more people in your own agency attending these. Then you can start to have the conversations that really will make this sustain.
Yeah, we're building the culture of sustainability, one webinar at a time.
Woohoo!
So thanks, everybody. Have a happy holidays, and we'll talk to you in January.
Happy holidays.